Jaden stood on the threshold of the gym's entrance, his heart thudding so loudly he almost believed everyone inside could hear it. The building's exterior was unremarkable. Large glass doors framed by a brick facade, but to Jaden it might as well have been a fortress. Before him lay a place inhabited by lean, sculpted bodies moving with purpose and confidence, where the clang of metal and the steady hum of treadmills formed an intimidating symphony. For weeks, maybe months, he'd circled this block, sneaking glimpses of the interior through the tinted windows, mustering courage to step inside. Again and again, he turned away, gripped by the conviction that people like him, overweight and painfully self-conscious, didn't belong in spaces like this. Tonight, however, something was different. An online clip of Dwayne Johnson, the famous wrestler turned inspiration, had played in his head throughout the day. He'd watched it multiple times, a snippet where Dwayne had looked straight into the camera and said, "The hardest step is the one that gets you moving." Jaden had replayed those words so often that they felt etched into his thoughts. Now he clung to them like a lifeline, a shield against the torrent of doubts that threatened to drag him back home. So here he was, hoodie pulled tight, overshadowed by the building's fluorescent glare, wrestling with the possibility that he might walk in and discover he was braver than he believed, or confirm every humiliating suspicion that he wasn't. He let out a shaky breath. Over the last few years, his body had become a source of shame, the weight piling on with each passing month. At school, he'd endured snickers from classmates whenever he tried to exercise. He recalled an embarrassing gym class fiasco in which he wheezed after just one lap, prompting some kids to chant "Tubby" behind him. Those memories stung worse than any physical injury. Now the intangible fear of encountering that same ridicule here threatened to root his feet to the sidewalk. Yet for every mocking memory that tore at his self-esteem, there was Dwayne Johnson's voice replaying in his head, urging him to take that step. His gaze flitted around the parking lot. A handful of people were entering and exiting, wearing workout gear, casual expressions on their faces. They didn't seem tormented by the possibility of being judged. They just appeared to be going about their routines. "If they can do it," Jaden murmured under his breath, "maybe I can too." Summoning nerve from that tenuous thought, he placed a trembling hand on the glass door and walked in. The first rush of sensations overwhelmed him. Bright overhead lights, the clank of iron plates, the thrum of treadmills, and an undercurrent of sweat and disinfectant lingering in the air. He took a step forward, feeling as though he had crossed a border into a foreign land. Around him, people were jogging, lifting, stretching. No one seemed to glance his way, but that didn't silence his inner paranoia. In Jaden's mind, each second might be the moment when someone snickered or pointed. Desperate to blend in, he slunk toward the far wall near a rack of lighter dumbbells. He had just begun mustering the courage to pick up a dumbbell when a shadow fell across him. Heart pounding, he turned to see someone enormous. Broad shoulders, thick forearms, a face that was instantly recognizable from TV, movie cameos, and countless interviews. Dwayne Johnson, in the flesh, towered over him with a friendly yet curious expression. Jaden almost dropped the weight in shock. He half expected to awaken from a dream. In that instant, the entire environment warped, the gym's commotion muffled, and he was acutely aware of each breath, each bead of sweat on his brow. "You new here?" rumbled the voice that had inspired millions. Jaden could hardly believe his ears, let alone the sight before him. Dwayne Johnson stood within arm's reach, wearing a simple black t-shirt that couldn't hide his massive frame. There was nothing flashy about him at this moment. No camera crew, no ring lights. Just a gentle, genuine curiosity in his eyes. Jaden's mind churned, reliving every highlight reel he'd seen of Dwayne Johnson. His iconic wrestling entrances, the interviews where he'd championed positivity and discipline, the countless social media posts showing him pushing heavy iron. And now here he was, close enough that Jaden could pick up the faint scent of cologne or maybe chalk dust. Yeah," Jaden finally croaked, realizing Dwayne was waiting for an answer. "I mean, I'm new to the gym. Well, new to this gym. Or any gym, actually." Instantly, he regretted how incoherent he sounded, but Dwayne Johnson merely chuckled, an easy warmth in his tone. "All good, buddy. Gotta start somewhere, right?" Jaden relaxed a fraction. He couldn't help noticing that Dwayne's presence seemed to anchor the chaotic environment. Before Dwayne had approached, the weight of potential judgment felt crippling. Now it felt more like the space had quietly rearranged itself, giving Jaden a small bubble of safety. He forced himself to speak before he chickened out altogether. "I'm not sure if I'm cut out for this." The honesty spilled from his lips unbidden, but he realized that if he couldn't admit his fears to the man whose motivational words had brought him here, then whom could he admit them to? Dwayne nodded, leaning slightly against a lat pull-down machine. "I hear that a lot," he said, crossing his arms. Even in a relaxed posture, his muscles rippled. "You'd be surprised how many folks walk in feeling like they don't belong. But let me ask you something. Do you want to change? Because that's the real question. If the answer's yes, you're already further along than you think." Jaden swallowed. "Yes, I do," he said quietly. He wanted more than anything not to be the butt of jokes, not to feel winded going up a flight of stairs, not to see disappointment in the mirror every morning. Dwayne's lips curved into a grin, part empathy, part encouragement. "That's the spirit. Come on," he said, pointing toward a relatively open area by the treadmills. "Why don't you warm up with me?" Dwayne's invite stunned Jaden. The idea of working out with a wrestling legend was surreal. "Wait, with you?" Jaden blurted, fear mingling with excitement. "Man, I can't keep up with whatever you're doing." He remembered seeing videos of Dwayne hoisting giant barbells, dripping with sweat, but unstoppable. "Look, I won't be flipping any tires or benching 400 pounds tonight," Dwayne assured him with a laugh. "I'm just here to get in some reps, maybe help you settle in." Jaden's mind reeled. Was this a dream? He nodded, stepping aside to let Dwayne lead the way. They approached a free treadmill. "We'll start simple," Dwayne said, hitting some buttons on the console. "Let's get your blood pumping." Jaden stepped onto the treadmill next to Dwayne's, his stomach twisting with nerves. The machine whirred to life, and he stumbled a bit as the belt began to move. Any minute, he feared he'd make a fool of himself, trip or slip. But with Dwayne right there, the old voice in Jaden's head was quieter than usual. He managed to keep pace at a moderate speed. Glancing sideways, he saw Dwayne jogging with practiced ease, sweat forming on his brow. Meanwhile, Jaden huffed, already winded. "Slow your pace a bit," Dwayne advised calmly, adjusting Jaden's speed. "We're warming up, not sprinting for gold." Jaden nodded, the tension in his chest easing. He realized that the stares and snickers he'd imagined weren't actually happening. People in the gym were busy with their own routines, only occasionally glancing, and if they did, it seemed more out of curiosity at Dwayne's presence than anything. Despite his quickening pulse, Jaden felt a flicker of gratitude that overshadowed his fear. Jaden's treadmill session was brief, just enough to raise his heart rate. When he stepped off, his calves and thighs already burned, and he mopped sweat from his brow with the sleeve of his hoodie. Dwayne gave him a nod of approval. "Good start, big man. Feeling all right?" Jaden gulped air, nodding. He was tired, sure, but also thrilled in a strange way. I'm good," he managed, voice rough. "Let's do some light weights," Dwayne suggested. "Ever used free weights before?" Jaden shook his head. "Not really," he admitted. He'd seen countless workout montages online, but had never put them into practice. Now a swirl of embarrassment fluttered in his stomach. He hoped Dwayne wouldn't think him too incompetent, but if Dwayne thought anything along those lines, he didn't show it. Instead, he guided Jaden over to a rack of dumbbells. "We'll start small, something you can handle with decent form." He picked out a pair of 10-pound dumbbells and handed them to Jaden. "Try some curls," Dwayne said. Jaden's face warmed. In his mind, 10 pounds sounded pathetic. He'd seen people online curling 50, 80, sometimes 100. But he forced himself to accept the weight. The moment he began curling, his arms felt shaky, the fatigue from the treadmill making them tremble even more. He did 5 reps before lowering them, breath unsteady. "Man, that's tough," he admitted, frustration creeping in. "I feel weak." Dwayne clasped a hand on Jaden's shoulder. "Listen, weakness is never a bad starting point. It's just that, a starting point." He raised a single brow. You'd be surprised how many folks you see lifting heavy started with weights lighter than that, especially if they were out of shape or brand new. Something about Dwayne's calm, assured tone made Jaden's frustration subside. He exhaled, steeling himself to try again. They went through a short circuit, more curls, some overhead presses with equally light dumbbells, then a few squats with no added weight at all, focusing on form. Each movement felt awkward. Jaden's posture needed correction, his balance wavered. But each time Dwayne was right there, instructing, adjusting, and giving quiet words of encouragement. At one point, a passing gym goer recognized Dwayne, pausing to say, "Hey man, big fan," but otherwise left them alone. Jaden was struck by how gracious Dwayne was, not losing focus on Jaden's session. Maybe that was the real reason Jaden managed to push through the discomfort. A month ago, he would have left the gym within 10 minutes. Today, he was powering through multiple sets, drenched in sweat, gritting his teeth through the burn. After an hour of moderate exercises, Dwayne guided Jaden to a free mat area to stretch. Collapsing on his back, Jaden stared up at the fluorescent lights, letting out a ragged laugh of disbelief. "That was insane," he said, arms splayed. Every muscle felt like it was quivering. "I didn't think I could do half of what we did." Dwayne crouched beside him with a grin. "You've barely scratched the surface, buddy. Trust me, you're stronger than you know. Show up tomorrow and we'll do it again." A flicker of fear reemerged. Could he handle another day like this? But Dwayne's unwavering confidence was contagious. "Yeah, I'll try," Jaden said. He peeled himself off the mat with a groan and hoisted his backpack, feeling both exhausted and oddly light, as if he'd just conquered a small war. "Take a shower, kid," Dwayne said, giving him a friendly pat on the shoulder. "When you walk out that door, I want you to remember this feeling. It's your new baseline." Jaden nodded, taking measured steps toward the locker room. Adrenaline still buzzed in his veins. Part of him worried that if he stopped moving, the old doubts would come rushing back. But for now, he clutched to that spark of hope. Behind him, he heard Dwayne speaking to another gym-goer with the same friendly tone, then the low clank of a barbell. Jaden entered the locker room, mind drifting with the realization that, for the first time, he'd survived a workout, and not just with anyone, but with Dwayne Johnson. It felt surreal, like he'd stepped into a motivational video that had come to life. His heart hammered with pride, and it was a new sensation, one he wanted to feel again. That night, Jaden could barely sleep. Each time he rolled over, his muscles complained. But beneath the soreness, there was a warmth he couldn't ignore. When he finally drifted off, he dreamed not of humiliation or fear, but of setting personal records and receiving nods of respect from strangers in a place that once terrified him. Come morning, his alarm jarred him awake at a time earlier than usual. As he shut it off, a part of him wanted to stay in bed, to let his body recover. But then he remembered the promise Dwayne had coaxed out of him. Show up tomorrow. The walk to the gym on day 2 was accompanied by a swirl of second thoughts. Would Dwayne even be there? Would the bullies he feared appear? Most pressing was, do I really have the grit to keep pushing? By the time he arrived, the early sun was just peeking over the rooftops. He hovered at the entrance for a moment, feeling the phantom tightness in his chest. But the memory of Dwayne's unwavering gaze pushed him forward. With a deep breath, he stepped inside. The scene was calmer than the previous evening. Morning gym goers ran the treadmills, some with headphones, others exchanging quiet greetings. Jaden scanned the floor, not seeing Dwayne. Unease rippled through him. Maybe he'd be alone this time, forced to face his old insecurities without the safety net of Dwayne's presence. His face grew hot at the thought, but he forced himself to pick a vacant treadmill. One step at a time, he whispered, remembering how Dwayne had said that was the key. He started at a slow pace, letting his stiff joints warm up. He reminded himself of the form tips Dwayne had shared. Keep posture upright. Let arms swing naturally. As he glanced around, he realized that no one was paying extra attention to him. If anything, they gave him the same casual, polite smiles they gave to any newcomer. That sense of normalcy steadied his nerves. He completed 10 minutes of light jogging, nearly collapsing when he hopped off. Even so, an exhilarating sense of accomplishment swelled inside him. This time, he didn't run out of the gym. He was ready to tackle the weights. Approaching the rack where he'd worked with Dwayne the night before, Jaden froze when a muscular man with tattoos took the next station. The old fear flared. What if he laughs at my tiny dumbbells? His hands itched to snatch heavier weights just to seem less feeble. But he caught himself, recalling Dwayne's advice. It's not about impressing others. It's about challenging yourself. So Jaden grabbed the same 10-pounders as yesterday and began a set of curls. The man with tattoos cast a sidelong glance, but to Jaden's surprise, he gave a faint nod of acknowledgement, then returned to his own routine. Relief flooded Jaden. The boogeyman in his head, the one who told him everyone was judging, was losing its grip. He repeated the circuit from day one, though each motion demanded grit from his exhausted muscles. By the time he finished, his t-shirt was soaked. Panting, he sat on a nearby bench, head spinning with equal parts fatigue and triumph. A new voice startled him. "Hey, saw you working. Good job, man. Keep at it." He looked up to see the man with tattoos offering a genuine thumbs up before heading off. For a moment, Jaden just sat there, stunned. In that stranger's simple gesture was acceptance, encouragement. The moment hammered home something Dwayne had said. Most folks in the gym are too busy with their own progress to tear you down. Some might even root for you if they notice your dedication. Jaden felt a tightness in his chest, not from fear, but from an unexpected spark of pride. Over the next weeks, Jaden established a routine. He'd wake up earlier, pack a gym bag, and arrive at the facility with the morning crowd. Sometimes Dwayne was there, blasting through advanced workouts that left Jaden slack-jawed. On those days, Dwayne would pause occasionally to check on him, offering a few pointers or even a quick demonstration. His positivity never waned, and each time Jaden completed a set, he'd receive an enthusiastic nod or an attaboy that warmed Jaden's spirit. But on days Dwayne wasn't around, Jaden discovered that he could still function. The gym no longer felt like forbidden territory. He recognized faces, a tall woman who always did squats, an older gentleman who used the elliptical for an hour, the young staffer at the front desk who'd greet him with a half-sleepy morning. None of them were mocking him. Occasionally, someone would even say, "You're making progress," or "Your form's looking good." Every supportive word dismantled a bit more of Jaden's old belief that he was an intruder here. He also found himself forging a bond with Dwayne that went beyond mere hero worship. One morning, they ended up on neighboring benches doing chest presses. Jaden struggled to keep the bar steady, a mere 30 pounds of weight rattling at the ends, while Dwayne was repping something close to 200. Once Jaden finished his set, arms shaking, Dwayne racked his own bar and sat up. "Proud of you, man," he said, passing Jaden a water bottle. "Few weeks ago, you wouldn't have believed you could do that." Jaden sipped gratefully, recalling how the first day he'd come in, he'd been terrified just to do dumbbell curls. Now he was benching, albeit lightly. "It feels good," he admitted, voice raw with effort. "I mean, it's still humiliating how little I can lift, but—" Dwayne shook his head before Jaden could finish. "Knock that talk off," he said gently. "Everyone starts somewhere. I've seen guys bench pressing an empty bar at first. With discipline, they eventually press 3 times that. Right now, you're building your foundation." Jaden nodded, the echoes of an old sense of shame trying to creep in, but overshadowed by Dwayne's unwavering encouragement. "I guess it's a matter of perspective," Jaden said slowly. "I'd be a lot better if I'd started months ago, or years." Dwayne let out a good-natured laugh. "Then start now. Dwelling on what you should have done is time wasted. Focus on what you're doing." The words sank in deep, each set fueling an inner transformation. With every rep and day that passed, the gym floor, once a battleground of potential judgment, became a place where Jaden found incremental victories, an extra 5 pounds added to the bar, a full set of reps without collapsing, a minute longer on the treadmill. Each improvement, no matter how small, felt monumental. Soon, Jaden noticed changes outside the gym too. His posture improved. He walked with a bit more confidence. His diet shifted as well, less junk, more balanced meals. The weight began to drop, not dramatically, but steadily enough that he caught glimpses of a slimmer face in the mirror. He found himself smiling at the reflection, an act that used to cause him discomfort. The biggest revelation, though, was that he was forging discipline. This wasn't a fad or a short burst of motivation. It was becoming part of his identity. One afternoon, rummaging through his closet for a shirt that fit better, he paused at an old t-shirt he used to avoid because it clung to his belly too tightly. Tentatively, he tried it on. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't terrible either. He smiled, feeling a flicker of pride that overshadowed the usual self-criticism. The sense of "I don't belong" was dissolving, replaced by a quiet determination. He did belong, and he was proving it day by day. Not everyone was supportive, of course. Jaden discovered that as much as the gym was filled with people minding their own business, there were still occasional sneers or backhanded remarks from individuals who thrived on belittling others. One evening, he overheard two men whispering, "He's trying too hard. He'll quit in a month," punctuated by a dismissive snicker. The old panic flared in his chest, but he recalled how Dwayne had confronted bullies before, both in the ring and here in the real world, and Jaden found a kernel of courage. He forced himself to hold his ground, finishing his set, ignoring them. Afterward, he walked away with his head high, refusing to let them sabotage the progress he'd painstakingly built. Another time, Jaden felt an emotional storm brewing when a trainer at the front desk politely suggested he do more functional exercises. Though well-intended, it rang in his ears as a suggestion that he still wasn't truly fit enough for standard lifts. The old shame surfaced, but he reminded himself that advice wasn't condemnation. The next day, he tried some functional movements and discovered they actually helped his mobility and balance. The experience taught him that not every suggestion or remark was a personal attack, something unimaginable to the Jaden who first walked in, convinced everyone was out to judge him. Meanwhile, outside the gym, Jaden's personal life blossomed in subtle ways. He found he had more energy for everyday tasks, and the people around him, family, acquaintances, noticed his changing demeanor. At school, he was still quiet, but no longer the hunched-over figure trying to vanish at the back of the room. He even caught a few classmates doing double takes, perplexed by the firmer set of his shoulders and the fresh brightness in his eyes. Some days he wore t-shirts that used to be too tight, no longer draping himself in the baggiest hoodie possible. On a whim, he even asked a classmate if she wanted to join him at the gym after school, surprised when she said yes, curious to see how he'd been training. Above all, Jaden kept returning to the same reminder. "It's not about them, it's about me." This phrase had become a silent mantra whenever he felt the swirl of anxiety creeping in. It had been a nugget of wisdom gleaned from Dwayne one morning after Jaden had sheepishly admitted he'd read comments online ridiculing overweight people who start working out. Dwayne had shaken his head, saying, "They'll always talk. Haters gonna hate, as they say. It's not about them, it's about you, your journey, your life, your wins." Those words had struck Jaden like a gong, resonating each time he questioned his place on the gym floor. As the weeks rolled into months, Jaden's interactions with Dwayne evolved from hero worship to something akin to mentorship. Dwayne would still check in on him, offering a fist bump or a quick joke, but he also gave Jaden space, trusting him to navigate the routine on his own. "Take the training wheels off," as Dwayne put it. Jaden found that independence invigorating. He was no longer leaning on Dwayne's presence as a crutch. He was forging his own rhythm, his own sense of accomplishment. If he stumbled, he knew Dwayne was around, but the impetus to keep going, those footsteps on the treadmill, that push through the last rep, came from Jaden's own determination. Eventually, there came a day that felt like a turning point. Jaden walked in, warmed up on the treadmill, and approached the bench press area with a confidence that startled him. The bar, once a daunting piece of metal, now resembled a tool he could manage. He added modest weight and settled down under the bar. In the past, he'd hesitate, double-checking if someone else needed the bench more or worry that watchers might snicker at his puny plates. Today, he simply gripped the bar, inhaled, and pressed. He completed his first set, racked the bar, and sat up. His chest heaved, but a broad smile stretched across his face. No panic, no meltdown, just the sweet ache of muscles that had accepted the challenge. A voice behind him cleared a throat. Ben, one of the gym's trainers, stepped over. Need a spot? Jaden shrugged. Sure, I'd appreciate it. Ben offered a quick nod, standing behind the bench as Jaden resumed. Jaden went through another set, pushing harder. When he racked the weight, Ben grinned, offering a friendly pat on Jaden's shoulder. Good set. You've come a long way. I remember your first day. Looked like you wanted the floor to swallow you up. Jaden let out a light laugh. Yeah, that was me. He still recalled how each step inside the gym that day felt like stepping onto a stage lit by a million critical eyes. Now, that old fear was just an echo. But you stayed, Ben continued, and you're looking strong, man. Jaden found his cheeks flushing. Compliments were still unfamiliar territory. He mumbled a thank you, feeling the flutters of pride in his chest. A few minutes later, near the squat racks, he caught sight of Dwayne Johnson in the midst of a rigorous set. Despite the sweat beading on his brow, Dwayne offered Jaden a quick wave and a beaming smile as if to say, I see you, keep it up. Jaden nodded back. The scene struck him. The gym's hustle, the synergy of people from different walks of life, each chasing a personal best. A space that once embodied fear for him had become a realm of possibility. Later, as Jaden finished up with a cool down on the stationary bike, a quiet voice piped up next to him. Hey, aren't you that kid who… Jaden turned, spotting a timid girl around his age, arms wrapped around herself. She blushed, glancing at the floor. I think I saw you on social media. A clip, maybe, with Dwayne Johnson? People were sharing it around, calling it #GymTransformation or something. He blinked, stunned. Indeed, he recalled that day someone had been filming a snippet where Dwayne gave Jaden a few pointers, praising his form. Jaden never expected it to go viral, yet apparently it had circulated. He found himself unsure how to respond. Yeah, that's me, I guess. The girl's eyes sparkled with cautious admiration. It was inspiring, she admitted softly. I'm kind of scared too, so watching you push through made me think I should try. Jaden's heart soared. He inhaled, letting the wonder sink in. If you ever need a workout, buddy, let me know, he offered, surprising even himself with the invitation. She smiled shyly, murmuring a thank you. When he finally left the gym that evening, Jaden felt a sense of belonging so deep it overshadowed any residual ache in his body. He realized his journey had become bigger than just losing weight or impressing others. It was about rewriting how he saw himself, and in doing so, giving others permission to face their own insecurities. That night, he opened his phone, scrolled to the old motivational video from Dwayne that had started him on this path, but paused, realizing he no longer needed it quite as desperately. He had found the spark within himself. Over time, Jaden's bond with Dwayne Johnson crystallized into something that felt almost like an older brother dynamic. While Dwayne's own schedule was often hectic, he sometimes disappeared for weeks traveling or shooting projects. Whenever he reappeared, he made sure to check in on Jaden's progress. They'd share a quick chat about new personal records, or Dwayne would share a tip he picked up from a coach or a fellow athlete. Jaden, in turn, would recount his incremental victories. I added 20 pounds to my squat, or I ran my first mile without stopping. Each success lit a brighter spark in Dwayne's eyes, as if encouraging Jaden was just as fulfilling for him as it was for Jaden to see progress. By the 4-month mark, Jaden was unrecognizable from the timid figure who'd lurked outside the gym, paralyzed by fear. Sure, he still had more weight to lose, and sure, he might never become a hulking bodybuilder, but he carried himself differently. Shoulders back, stride more assertive, a grin often tugging at his lips. That shift in posture and attitude drew the notice of classmates who had once teased him, family members who had given up lecturing him about doing something about your health, and random acquaintances who saw that the gym newbie was no longer so new. One afternoon, as Jaden was finishing a session of bench presses, he racked the weight and sat up. He noticed 2 men watching him from a few feet away, exchanging whispers. The old Jaden would have panicked, certain they were mocking him. But this version of Jaden decided to meet their gaze straight on. They looked away, perhaps sensing no intimidation here. He smirked, standing, inadvertently recalling how Dwayne had handled those bullies with unwavering calm. But not everyone was content to let the reformed Jaden find his groove. A pocket of negativity persisted, either an insecure lifter or a random troll. Late one evening, an older guy with a smug grin approached Jaden between sets. "I've seen you around here. You're getting all this hype because you got The Rock hooking you up," he scoffed, referencing Dwayne by an old nickname. "But let's be real. Without him, you'd have quit." Jaden felt a flash of anger, remembering a time those words would have crushed him. He managed to keep his voice steady as he replied, "Maybe, but I didn't quit, so that's irrelevant." The man rolled his eyes and walked off, but Jaden's hand wasn't trembling, and he continued his workout, more determined than ever. In the locker room that night, he reflected on how Dwayne's involvement had indeed been a catalyst. But the daily discipline, the repeated showing up, the personal battles won, those were all Jaden. He recognized that while Dwayne provided a spark, it was his own perseverance fueling the flame. That realization tasted like freedom. Outside the gym, life felt richer. When old acquaintances teased, he'd brush it off more easily. When asked for advice by peers noticing his transformation, he responded with honesty, "I'm still learning, but if you want to come train with me, let's do it." Some took him up on the offer, forging a small circle of newbies in the free weight area who used to stand at the perimeter, uncertain. Now they formed a cluster of determined novices, an unspoken alliance that reminded Jaden of how far he'd come in 4 short months. And whenever self-doubt whispered, like if he faced a new exercise that intimidated him, he'd recall Dwayne's voice urging him to push, to try, to fail if needed, but to fail forward. Then one fateful evening, Jaden found himself stepping on the scale at the gym's back corner. For ages, stepping on a scale had been his private nightmare. But as the digital number blinked into view, he felt a surge of triumph. He was down 30 pounds from the day he'd first walked in. The excitement flared so bright that tears pricked his eyes. He snapped a quick photo, wanting to commemorate the milestone. Then swallowing hard, he considered sending it to Dwayne. Was that weird? But Jaden realized Dwayne would want to see it. So he typed a short message. "Down 30, couldn't have done it without your push, thank you," and hit send. The next day, Jaden was midway through a shoulder routine when his phone buzzed with a reply. He glanced at it, heart skipping a beat. Dwayne had responded, "Hell yeah, buddy. Proud of you. Keep crushing it. Hash no limits." Jaden's grin was so wide that a few people around him noticed. He read the message twice, letting the validation sink in like a balm to every old wound that once told him he'd never measure up. He pushed through that session with even greater energy, focusing on precise form and methodical reps. By now, the routine was second nature. Dynamic warm-up, moderate weight on each lift, consistent incremental progression. The entire concept of "I don't belong here" had dissolved into a faint echo. He was so focused on his own progress that he'd nearly forgotten the gym was once an intimidating place full of potential bullies. Life, however, has a way of testing newly claimed confidence. As Jaden finished a set of lat pull-downs, a scrawny-looking guy with a sneer approached, wearing a sleeveless hoodie that revealed arms covered in edgy tattoos. "Hey," the stranger said, "heard you're Dwayne Johnson's little project or something." Jaden set the lat bar down calmly. "I guess so," he replied, watchful. The stranger sniffed, eyes roving over Jaden's physique. "Why him? You some special charity case?" The words stung, but Jaden realized with a jolt that he wasn't trembling. He actually felt pity for the man, who must have been harboring insecurities if that was the best shot he could take. "Guess I'm not special," Jaden said, voice even. "He just saw I wanted to change and decided to help. Anyone can do it if they want." The man rolled his eyes. "Sure, buddy. Keep telling yourself that." With a dismissive snort, he walked away. A month earlier, Jaden might have collapsed under that scorn. Now he exhaled, rolling his shoulders. If the worst the gym had to offer was a stray jerk, he could handle that. He resumed his set, letting the tension fuel him, each pull an assertion of his belonging. Later that night, after showering off the sweat, Jaden lingered in the mirror. He could see a difference: less belly, arms sporting the beginnings of definition, posture upright. But the biggest change was intangible. A glimmer in his eyes, a subtle challenge in his gaze that dared any old bully to call him worthless, because he no longer believed that. He truly was living a new script. At home, he rummaged in the kitchen for a post-workout meal, opting for grilled chicken and veggies instead of the microwave pizza he would have once devoured. As he ate, a wave of gratitude swept over him. For Dwayne's support, for the strangers in the gym who offered kindness, for the negativity that tested him, and, most importantly, for his own courage to keep stepping forward. He realized he had joined a tribe that included Dwayne, but also countless others who overcame their own barriers. That tribe's unifying principle was simpler than he'd ever imagined. Just show up, do the work, and your future shifts. Several more months flew by, each bringing further improvement. The gym had become Jaden's sanctuary, a place where he wasn't overshadowed by doubt. One evening, Dwayne was in town again, finishing an intense squat session, sweating, adrenaline pumping. He spotted Jaden doing Romanian deadlifts. After Jaden completed his set, Dwayne approached with a broad smile. "Look at you, man. Upgrading your lifts, I see." Jaden, chest heaving from the session, grinned. "I'm trying. My hamstrings are on fire, though." Dwayne chuckled. "That's good pain. Means you're building something." They compared notes for a few minutes. Jaden's current routine, how he balanced cardio with weightlifting, small adjustments to his meal plan that were helping him drop body fat steadily. Dwayne, always brimming with encouragement, gave him a fist bump. "I knew you had it in you, but you realize how many folks you're inspiring, right?" A hint of embarrassment colored Jaden's cheeks. "Inspiring? I'm just a random guy who decided not to quit." Dwayne gave a firm shake of his head. "Don't sell yourself short. People see your consistency and think, maybe I can do it too." Trust me, it matters. Something about hearing that from Dwayne made Jaden's stomach flutter. He recalled how in the early days he'd gleaned strength from Dwayne's words. Now the circle had turned, and others were gleaning strength from Jaden's journey. He paused, letting that realization sink in. "Thanks," he said softly. "I mean it." They ended up doing some cable work together, each set peppered with casual conversation. Dwayne recounted a recent wrestling cameo in an upcoming event, describing how pushing through ring rust wasn't too different from Jaden pushing through gym insecurities. Both required discipline. "It's all a mind game," Dwayne explained. "The body can adapt, but your head can talk you out of it if you let it." Jaden nodded, recalling those early days when even stepping inside felt like an insurmountable challenge. Now he was nailing lifts he once feared. As they wrapped up, Dwayne tossed Jaden a towel. "So how's it feel to be a regular now? Not a newbie?" Jaden chuckled, wiping sweat from his face. "Feels weird to say it, but I feel like I belong. And not just because of you. I found my own confidence." Dwayne's eyes glinted with pride. "That's the best part, man. You took the hardest step, and then the next and the next. It's all you." Jaden hoisted his gym bag, heart buoyed by the conversation. He thought about the concept of paying it forward, how he'd begun helping a couple of other novices. A quiet suggestion, or demonstration of form. It astonished him how quickly he'd gone from the timid newcomer to something resembling a mentor. They parted ways in the parking lot, exchanging a quick handshake. Under the glow of street lamps, Jaden felt a surge of gratefulness for the path that had led him here. He'd discovered that the gym wasn't just a place of potential ridicule. It was a crucible for forging self-worth. Each time he'd wanted to run, he chose instead to stay, to do one more set, to be better than yesterday. In that sense, every drop of sweat was a testament to the power of showing up, no matter how daunting the stage seemed. About a year after that first terrifying step through the glass doors, Jaden found himself in front of a mirror again. This time, he was at home, preparing to record a short clip for a friend's social media campaign about personal transformations. He felt a swirl of anxiety, but also a determination not unlike what he'd felt approaching the gym. If sharing his story might help someone else step past their fear, it was worth it. He positioned his phone against a small stand, took a seat, and pressed record. "Hey, I'm Jaden," he began, voice quivering slightly. "A year ago, I walked into a gym thinking everyone would laugh. I was out of shape, insecure, and scared of being judged. But thanks to a bunch of supportive folks and a push from Dwayne Johnson, I stuck with it. He lifted a simple 30-pound dumbbell, which used to be an impossible weight for him. Now I'm stronger than I ever dreamed I'd be. Not just physically, but mentally. I belong here. He finished the recording, breathing unsteadily. A wave of relief passed over him. He recalled how crippling a single stare or rude remark used to be. Now he just recorded a video that might be seen by dozens, maybe hundreds, or even thousands of people. He felt a sense of lightness at having bared his journey. Hitting send, he realized he was symbolically paying forward the help that he himself had once needed. 2 days later, the clip had garnered an unexpected wave of positive responses. Messages flooded in from acquaintances, classmates, even strangers. Some wrote they'd been too frightened to join a gym, but felt encouraged by his honesty. Others shared their own stories of struggling with body image. Jaden read each message, heart swelling, realizing that every rep in the gym had been building more than just muscle. It had been building a voice, one that could resonate with others. Dwayne caught wind of the clip as well, shooting Jaden a text. "Way to go, man. That took guts. Keep shining. Somebody out there needs your words today." Jaden nearly teared up reading it. He typed back a brief thanks, reflecting on how improbable this all felt. The young man who once froze at the gym doorway was now prompting others to step forward. In the following weeks, Jaden considered taking a personal training course. The idea popped into his head after he helped a friend named Serena perfect her deadlift form. She joked, "You'd make a great trainer, you know that?" The comment stuck. He mulled over how fulfilling it would be to guide others down the same path he'd walked. He didn't imagine himself as the next Dwayne Johnson, not by a long shot, but maybe he could cultivate a corner of that supportive environment. He casually mentioned the notion to Dwayne, who responded with enthusiastic encouragement. "Dude, do it! You've lived it, so you can teach it best." The suggestion lit a new spark. It was the first time in years he'd thought about a future ambition beyond mere survival in a world of bullies. Now he envisioned a possible career helping others who felt out of place just as he once did. Whether that meant official certification or just being a friend at the gym, he recognized his own transformation. He'd conquered the hardest part, confronting the reflection in the mirror that used to say, "You don't belong here," and rewriting it to say, "You do." On the anniversary of his first workout, Jaden arrived at the gym early. He walked in with the same hoodie, though it hung loosely now, glancing around the space that had once radiated intimidation. Instead of recollections of fear, he felt a warm nostalgia. He made a silent vow. No matter where life led him, he'd never forget the humility and courage that started here. He ambled over to the bench press station that, a year ago, had felt like a monstrous contraption. Now it was a trusted ally. He added plates with a confidence that belied the boy who once struggled with 10-pound dumbbells. As he began his set, a voice behind him spoke. "Mind if I spot you?" Jaden glanced back, spotting a high school-age kid, shy-eyed, reminiscent of Jaden's old timidity. "Sure," Jaden said, smiling. The kid positioned himself behind the bar, uncertain. Jaden recognized the stiff posture, the same tension he'd worn for months. "I see you're new here. Need any pointers after I'm done?" The boy nodded slowly, gratitude flickering in his eyes. When Jaden finished his set, he racked the bar and sat up, guiding the newcomer through a safer stance. He recalled the day Dwayne first corrected his posture, how each tip carried not just technique, but respect. After the boy tried a few reps, breathing hard, Jaden patted his shoulder. "Good job. Keep showing up. That's the real trick." Just then, the gym's door swung open and in walked Dwayne Johnson, all presence and broad grin. He greeted a few regulars, then caught sight of Jaden, raising a hand in a friendly wave. Jaden waved back, heart warm with the circle of it all. Dwayne sauntered over, quickly sizing up Jaden's progress. "Look at you, man. That bar used to intimidate you. Now you're doing sets like it's nothing. And you've become the local mentor, I see." He cocked a grin at the boy, who fidgeted, but smiled shyly. Jaden shrugged, looking down at the bar. "Just paying forward what you did for me, I guess." Dwayne gave a deep, appreciative chuckle. "That's how it works, brother. One helping hand extends to another, and it keeps going." They stood for a moment in companionable silence. The hum of the gym around them, a place that tested them physically, but also fostered community for those who overcame fear. The boy they just helped took a timid step away to attempt another set, leaving the two in a quiet bubble of reflection. You know, Dwayne said, crossing his arms, this place was never about being the biggest or the strongest for me. It was about proving I belonged. You've proven that 100 times over. Jaden exhaled, memories flickering of the bullies, the self-doubt, the tears he'd once swallowed. I guess I did. The overhead lights glinted off the weights, the clang of iron a comforting rhythm. And in that moment, Jaden recognized that gyms or any place in life were not demarcated by who you once were, but by who you choose to become. He recalled the day he first encountered the double doors, paralyzed by the notion that all eyes would judge him. A full year later, he stood in the same building, unafraid. If a younger version of himself, trembling in that hoodie, were to walk in now, he'd embrace that fearful boy and say, keep going, this is just the beginning. When the kid from earlier turned around, asking for another spot, Jaden nodded, stepping forward. A soft grin touched his lips, because indeed, belonging wasn't about the shirt size or the weight on the bar. It was about the willingness to show up, to push forward, to let your vulnerability grow into strength. That was the transformation Dwayne Johnson had shown him. That was the transformation Jaden now lived.